Okay, so for our lesson number 1, it is types of random variables. So definition muna tayo ng random variable. So it is a quantitative variable whose value is the result of an event or experiment. It is represented by an uppercase letter or variable such as X, Y, or Z, or any capital letter present in the alphabet. So it is called random because it can take different values. Lowercase letters are used to represent the actual values from the experiment. The following are examples of random variables. So on the first column, this column, so this rolling a die, tossing a coin 10 times, randomly picking a student and measuring his or her weight. Then the random variable is the number of facing up and rolling a fair die, number of tails in 10 tosses, number of height, sorry, it should be weight of the student, not height. Because based on the experiment, it is the weight. Okay, so there are two types of discrete random variable kasi. Sorry. Two types of random variables. So the first one is the discrete random variable. So by definition, it is a finite number of distinct values. It has countable number of possible values. So discrete random variable is a variable with finite number. When you say finite number, meron siyang limit. And one characteristic of a discrete random variable is that it is countable. Meaning to say, nabibilang natin. Kumbaga, yun nga, unique characteristic ng discrete random variable is we can count no, yung mga variables or possible values dun sa isang experiment. Let's say, for example, we can identify the number of dogs a family has, the number of children in a family, the number of participants in a seminar, the number of light bulbs that are working in a box of 20. So, yun lang yung tatandaan nyo sa discrete random variable. Meron siyang limit kung ilan lang yung values na pwede, and then yung mga values na yon ay pwede natin bilangin. Next, the continuous random variable. So in continuous random variable, it's the opposite of the discrete. It is the opposite of the discrete random variable. So it is infinite in number, and then you can measure the values on a continuous scale. So meaning to say, if we are going to identify continuous random variable, we cannot count it, but then again, we can identify the number of possible values by measuring it using different measuring tools. Let's say for example, the length of a randomly selected phone call, the volume of a soda in a can, the weight of incoming grade 11 students. So as you can notice, we do have different measuring tools in order for us to identify kung mga nasa example na to. No? Let's say, for example, the length of a randomly selected phone call. Let's say, for example, we are considering here the time, then the volume of a soda in a can. So volume, there are different measuring tools like beaker, graduated cylinder, so on and so forth. And then we have the weight of incoming grade 11 students. So the weight, you can measure that using a weighing scale. So yun yung tatandaan natin. In continuous random variable, it is infinite. Okay? So well, there's no limit on it. And then we can count or we can identify the possible values by measuring it in a continuous scale. Okay? Or using a measuring tool. Malinaw po ba yung difference ng discrete and continuous random variable?
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes po, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next. So let's proceed to a quick assessment about the discrete and continuous random variable. So please type down your answer in our chat box. So classify the following as discrete or continuous. So the length of a randomly selected phone call. So is it a discrete or continuous? Okay, type lang natin yung answer natin. Ayan. Okay, so based on your, most of your answers are, yeah, it is infinite. So ano dapat yung term na dapat natin gamitin? So it is continuous. Be mindful of the spelling ha, continuous. Okay, ayan. So the answer for number one is yeah, continuous random variable. Okay, next, number two, the volume of fruit juice in a bottle marked 500 ml. Okay, yan. Based on your answers, uh, according to you, it's continuous. Let's see. Okay, it's continuous random variable. Next, number three, the number of newspapers sold each month. Okay. So, based on your answer, no, based on your answers, that is discrete. So let's see. Yeah. So number three is a discrete random variable. So next, number four, the percentage change in monthly earnings of a company. Ayan, medyo confusing siya. Pwede ba natin bilangin yung percentage change in monthly earnings of a company? Or are we going to use a device or a measuring tool in order for us to determine the percentage change? Okay, sige. Okay. Okay, so let's reveal the answer for number four. Meron mga nag-answer ng discrete, meron din mga nag-answer ng continuous. So, hatiin ngayon. So, number four is a continuous random variable. Bakit? Kasi we cannot count, no, the percentage change. So, there's a specific tool or a specific formula that we're going to use in order for us to identify that. Okay? So, yung lahat ng percentage or things or events na kinakailangan ng percentage, under siya ng continuous random variable. Okay? So, let's proceed to the last number, number five. Ayan, the number of new products introduced by a direct selling company in 1 year. Okay, yeah. So most of you answered discrete. So let's reveal the answer for number five. So that is a discrete random variable. Okay? So mapapansin din natin, no, class, pag yung sa mga given or yung sa mga statements na under ng discrete random variable, nagamit sila ng the number. Okay? So nagsisignify yun na pwede natin siyang bilangin. Pag the number of cats, the number of dogs, no, the number of girls, the number of males. So para hindi kayo malito or hindi kayo mahirapan mag-identify. Okay? So I think malinaw naman yung types of random variables. So let's proceed to the next part or the second lesson for this module. So finding the possible values of a random variable. So dito, ang gagawin natin, we are going to identify the possible values. Let's say, for example, toss ka ng coin. So ano yung possible outcome. Pag sinabi kasi natin class na possible values, yun yung number of possible outcomes na lalabas. Okay? So, para mas maintindihan natin, let's have different examples. Okay, so example number 1, suppose two coins are tossed. Let x, variable x, capital X, be the random variable representing the number of heads that occur. Find the values of the random variable x. Okay? So, yung variable x natin dito, nagre-represent siya ng number of heads. Okay? Ng isang event. So, ang experiment natin dito ay magtutos daw tayo ng dalawang coins and then we are going to identify the number of heads on the possible outcomes given. Okay? So, pakita ko sa inyo, ito yung familiar kayo din sa tree diagram. Okay, so kung hindi ako nagkakamali na ituro to ng grade 7 or grade 8 ata. So, identifying the possible outcome. So, dito class, ito yung experiment natin. Yung nag-toss ka ng coin. So, sa first toss, meron kang head and tail. So, dun sa mga susunod na toss pa, ang possible na lumabas ay head, tail, saka head, tail lang naman. So, we are going to identify the possible outcomes. So, pwede magkaroon tayo ng head and tail and head, and tail. So, halimbawa, may duda kayo dito, pwede nyo gawin yung experiment na to, no? Mag-toss kayo ng dalawang coin, and then sulat nyo yung lahat ng possible outcome. Okay? So, yung lahat ng naka-red dito, ito yung first coin, and then yung lahat ng naka-blue dito, ito yung second coin natin. Okay? And then, itong mga possible outcomes na to, meron kasi tinatawag na sample space dito sa subject natin, sa probability, no? So, lahat ng possible outcomes na to ay ilalagay natin sa loob ng isang sample space. So, ito na siya, magiging head, ayun, head, head and tail and head, tail and tail. Okay? So, yung sample space, ito yung naglalaman ng all possible outcomes. Okay? So, next. Ayan. So, ito yung pagre-represent natin para ma-identify natin yung possible values ng experiment na to. So, in order for us to represent, we need to create a table with two columns. So, the first column is the possible outcomes. So, ililista nyo lang lahat ng possible outcomes dito, or yung nasa loob ng sample space. So, head and tail and head, tail and tail. So, bilangin natin yung value of the random variable x. Yung x natin, tandaan natin, class, is the number of heads based on the problem. So, bilangin natin yung sa isang event, or dun sa isang outcome pala, sorry. Yung dun sa isang outcome, kasi di ba class, meron tayong four possible outcomes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, in the first possible outcome, bilangin natin ilan yung heads na lumabas. So, 1, 2, kaya siya naging 2. And then dito sa second possible outcome, since meron tayong isang head, kaya siya naging 1. The third possible outcome, meron tayong isang head from the second coin, so that's 1. So sa fourth and last possible outcome, tail and tail, yung lumabas, so wala tayong makitang head, so that is equivalent to 0. Now, the possible value of a random variable x are 0, 1, and 2. So ito yung mga possible value na pwedeng lumabas sa experiment natin na to. So we can represent that mathematically by writing x, curly brace, 0, 1, 2. Kung may halimbawa may naulit na number, we can represent that as 1 na lang, no? Hindi natin pwede ilagay na 0, 1, 1, 2. Okay? Understood na yun na pag mayroong 1, possible na mayroong more than 1 na lumabas na gano'n na possible outcome. Okay? Sige, siguro hindi naman makukuha agad yun, no, sa isang example. So, let's proceed to another example. So, dito naman, suppose 3 coins are tossed. Let Z be the random variable representing the number of tails. So, kung sa number 1, number of heads ang hinahanap natin, dito number of tails, and then meron tayong tatlong coins dito. So, find the values of the random variable Z. So, our variable Z is the number of tails. So, I will present to you yung experiment and then the possible outcomes. Okay, so may tatlo kang coin. So, sa isang coin, heads and tails ang pwede lang lumabas. Di ba? Meron two possible outcomes. So, kung uh, kung meron kang tatlong coins, so meron kang anim na possible outcomes. So, ito yung mga possible outcomes. Head, 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 tail, head, tail, head, head, tail, 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 head, head, tail, head, tail, 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 head, and tail, tail, tail. Okay, so halimbawa, hindi kayo satisfied sa lumabas na possible outcome, you can do it, no? You can try it at home. Okay? And then, itong mga possible outcome na to, we can put it inside the sample space. So, we have H, A, N. Ito yun. So, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. Now, we are going to represent this now using the table. So, we're gonna do a two-column table. So, just list all the possible outcomes, and then the value of the random variable z, which is the number of tails. So, bibilangin natin per outcome kung ilan yung lumabas yung tail. So, in our first possible outcome, which is HHH, head, 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 wala tayong nakitang tail, kaya siya 0. So, dito, ilang tail ang lumabas? Isa lang, kaya siya naging 1. Dito, yung second coin natin, yung tail. Dito, yung second and third coin. Then, tail, head, head, meron tayong isa. Then, dalawang tails. Then, dalawang tails as well. And then, dito, meron tayong tatlong tails, kaya siya naging 3. Okay? So, the possible values for the random variable z are 0, 1, 2, and 3. And you can represent that mathematically by writing z is equal to the curly brace of 0, 1, 2, and 3. Or the elements of z, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Nakuha po ba?
Opo.
Yes po, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Do not worry kasi in our assessment naman or activity, ipoprovide ko yung problem and then ipoprovide ko din yung possible outcomes as well as the sample space. Okay? Ang gagawin nyo lang, since ang hinihingi lang naman sa objective ng lesson na to is mag-represent kayo. Ito yung gagawin nyo, yung table. Okay? So let's proceed to our last example for this lesson, I think. I think this will be the last example. So, two balls are drawn in succession without replacement from a box containing 5 red balls and 6 blue balls. Let y be the random variable representing the number of blue balls. Okay, number of blue balls. Sorry. Find the values of the random variable y. So, yung variable y natin is yung number of blue balls. Sorry, dapat y to, hindi siya x. Okay, so ito na, present ko na yung possible outcomes. Dalawang red, isang red blue, isang blue red, isang blue and blue. Okay? So, bilangin natin yung possible values for the number of blue balls. So, for our first possible outcome, makikita naman natin walang blue dyan, parehas red. So, kaya siya naging 0. Dito, may isa tayong blue. Kaya naging 1. Dito meron tayo isang blue din. Kaya siya naging 1. And then may dalawa tayong blue. Kaya siya naging 2. So the possible values for this is, ayan, ito muna pala yung sample space. So, ayan. So the possible value of a random variable y are 0, 1, and 2. So we can represent that as y is equal to the elements of y is equal to the elements of 0, 1, and 2. Okay. Meron pa pala tayong isang example. Yeah. So example number 4, write all the possible values of each random variable. So the first one is the variable x, random variable x, number of odd number outcomes in a roll of a die. So, yung die dito, no, yung dice yon, die. Singular ng dice ay die. So, sample space natin, since merong 6 spaces yung die, so yun lang naman yung possible outcome. Pwedeng lumabas yung 1, Pwedeng 2, pwedeng 3, 4, 5, hanggang 6. Hindi lalabas yung 7 doon, no? Kasi hanggang 6 lang yung cases ng die. So, kailangan natin is yung number of odd number outcomes in a roll of a die. So, kuhanin lang natin lahat ng odd number. 1, 3, and 5. So, bilangin natin. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, all possible outcomes of random variable x are 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so the second example, for example number 4, the random variable z is equal to the scores of a student in a 15-item test. So sample space natin ay 1 to 15. Bakit 1 to 15? Kasi di ba lahat naman to, numbers 1 to 15 is possible score no student natin. Okay, so since wala namang given na binigay, so we are just going to identify the possible scores, no, of a student in a 15-item test. So our possible values are z is equal to 1 to 15. Okay, nakuha po ba?
Opo.
Yes,
Opo.
sir.
Okay. Basta tandaan lang natin class yung sample space, ilista natin lahat ng possible outcome. Okay? Uh, so may quick assessment naman tayo para malaman natin. Ayan. So identify the possible values of the following experiments. So variable x is the number of tails outcomes in a coin toss twice. So, ang sample space niya ay head, 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 tails, tail, head, and tail, tail. So, kindly write down the elements or the possible values para sa number 1. Do not forget the curly braces. Curly braces. We are looking for the number of tails based on the problem. Okay. Ayan. Meron mga hindi, plus kailangan natin, pag magre-represent tayo, curly braces, hindi pwede yung parentheses, hindi pwedeng 0, 1 to lang. Okay, that will be marked as wrong, if ever. Okay? Ayan. So, meron nagsagot, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Ayan. Sige. So, let's reveal the answer for number 1. Ayan. So, the elements are 0, 1, and 2. So, yung number of tails. Diba dito, merong isa, merong 1, 1, dito dalawa, ito wala. So, kaya siya may 0. Okay? Next, number 2, z, random variable z, number of even number outcomes in a roll of a die. So, the sample space are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Be careful. Be mindful of the variable use. It's not x, it's z. Okay. Okay. Ayan. Okay, maraming salamat sa mga feedback. Ayan. Okay. Sige, reveal natin yung answer. Ayan. So, the answer is 2, 4, and 6. Okay? Ayan. I think malinaw naman yun, no? Now, let's proceed na for lesson number 3, which is about discrete probability distribution. Now, we are going to apply what we learned dun sa lesson number 2 dito sa lesson number 3. Okay, so gagawa tayo dito ng table, gagawa tayo ng graph, and then magsasagot tayo ng mga questions. Masasagutan natin yung mga questions na yon, yung mga real-life or practical questions na yon using the discrete probability distribution. Okay? Sige. Proceed na ako. This will be our last lesson, no? By the way. Yan. So, definition muna tayo ng discrete probability distribution. So, it consists of the values a random variable can assume and the corresponding probabilities. Now, di ba, yung random variable dito, yung all possible values, yun yung about dun sa table na present ko sa inyo kanina, no? So, meron tayong 2 column, possible values, and then the possible outcomes. Okay? So, and then magkakaroon pa tayo ng another, I think it's row for the corresponding probabilities. By the way, no, probability pala is about giving value for a certain event or for the certainty or uncertainty of a event to happen. Okay? So, yung probability, review to, nagre-range siya between 0 to 1 lang. So, beyond 1 and then less than 0, hindi na siya considered as probability. No? Considered naman siya as probability. However, we are looking for the standard kasi between 0 and 1. Pag 0 kasi, meaning impossible na mangyari. Pag 1, meaning 100%, possible siya mangyari. So, between 0 and 1 lang yung kino-consider natin. Okay? Ayan. So, let's take this example, no? So, if 2 coins are tossed, yung kanina example natin, the possible outcomes are the following. Ito, HH, HTT, H, and TT. So, if X is the random variable for the number of head. So, identify natin gaano kataas or gaano kababa or ano yung probability na lalabas yung head-head, head-tails, tail-head, and tail-tail. So, ito yung kanina, yung lesson number 2 natin. So, possible outcomes. And then, the second column is the value of the random variable. So, we already identified that one. Ayan. So, in order for us to get the probability of an event, okay, so the number of favorable outcomes all over total number of favorable outcomes. Sorry. So dito, yung sa denominator natin, lagi lang natin tatandaan kung ilan yung possible outcomes, kung ilan yung number ng possible outcomes, that will be your denominator. So dito, bilangin natin 1, 2, 3, 4. So meron tayong 4 possible outcomes. So ang ating denominator automatically is 4. Now, dito sa numerator natin, yung number of favorable outcomes, kung ilang beses lalabas or ilang beses mangyayari yung isang event. So, let's say, for example, dito sa unang possible outcome natin, ilang beses lumabas yung head, so 2. So, ayun yung ilalagay natin sa numerator. Pag halimbawa, isang head lang, ito, meron tayong 1, 2. Okay, sige. Pakita natin para mas maliwanag. Ayan. So, these are the chances or the probability na pag nag-toss ka ng coin, hindi pala ng coin, nag-toss ka ng coins, 2 coins specifically, ilan yung probability or ilan yung chance na ang lalabas na combination or possible outcome ay walang head. Okay? So, dito, head and head, dito meron ba? Merong head, dito meron ding head. So, meron tayong isang possible outcome na walang head. Kaya siya naging 1 over the total number of possible outcome, 4. Lalabas yung isang head. So, ito. So, ilan yung possible outcomes natin? So, 2. Kaya siya naging 2 over 4. Kailangan lang natin siya i-lowest term. Kaya siya naging 1/2. So dito, ilan yung percent or ilan yung chance na lalabas yung 2 heads. So dito may 2 tayong head. So ilan lang yung chance na lalabas siya? 2 ba? Or 1 lang? Hello?
1 lang po.
Yan, salamat. Isang beses lang siya possible na lumabas. Okay? Kahit yung number of possible values natin dito. Kasi yung dito, possible number of values yung nandito. So dito, ang binibilang natin is yung chance. Ilang beses lalabas. So pag ginamitan natin or nirepresent natin using the table, number of heads, 0, 1, and 2. Or ito yung possible values, no? Yung kanina na elements, 0, 1, and 2. Now, we are going to identify the probability of that event to happen. So pag walang head, ang chance ay 1/4 or 25% or 0.25. Pag merong isang head, that's 50%. 50%, sorry. And then kapag dalawa yung head, ang lalabas ay 1/4 or 25%. So pag pinag-add natin yan, 25 plus 50 plus 25, that is equivalent to 100%. Okay? Diyan natin malalaman kung yung probability ba or yung division ba ng probability ng isang event ay tama or hindi. Kasi pag nag-more than 100 yan, merong mali. Pag nag-less than 100, merong mali dun sa probability natin. Okay? So, ayun, ito yung sinasabi ko. So, the sum of all probabilities should be equal to 1 or 100%. Pag convert natin siya sa percentage. So, ayan, probabilities should be confined between 0 and 1. Sige. So, example number 1. So, construct a probability distribution for rolling a single die. So, kanina, ginawa na rin natin to. Ating sample space ay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, in order for us to solve for the probability, number of favorable outcomes over total number of favorable outcomes. So, dito, ano yung denominator natin? Ilan yung possible outcomes natin?
6 po.
Anim.
Yan. So, okay. So, 6. So, ilan yung favorable outcome or ilan yung possible outcome na lalabas ay 3?
Isa lang. Isa po.
Isa po.
Yung 6 po.
Isa lang po.
Okay. Isa lang din. Yung 1.
Isa lang.
Isa lang. Isa lang po.
So,
Isa lang po.
thank you. So, lahat ng nasa sample space natin, isang beses lang pwedeng lumabas. So, i-represent natin yan. So, the outcome, possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then the probability for each event to happen is 1/6 lang. Since isang beses lang naman sila pwedeng lumabas or possible lumabas kapag nag-roll ka ng die. So, ayan. Each outcome has a probability of 1/6. Pag kinonvert natin siya sa percentage, or decimal muna, then percentage, I think that is roughly about 16.667. Ayan. So, let's proceed to example number 2. So, determine whether the distribution, without the S, with S pala, dapat R to. The distributions are a discrete probability distribution. Ayan. P of X is equal to 1. Ayan. Sige nga, paki-identify. Ayan. Ito muna tayo dito. Paki-identify, is it a discrete probability distribution ba or hindi? Itong Px equals 1. Hello?
Hindi po.
Hindi po.
Hindi
bakit-
po, sir.
Bakit hindi po?
Kasi po may negative po.
Okay, may negative. Okay. Ano pa?
Decimal po.
Decimal. Di ba, ayan, sige. Yung fraction form, di ba, pwede natin siya i-convert sa decimal. So, we can represent probability with decimal as well. Pwede din percentage. Ano pa? How about the sum? Pag pinag-add ba yung 0.3, 0.6, saka 0.7, equivalent ba siya sa 1?
Hindi po.
Hindi po.
Sure kayo? Negative 0.3 plus 0.6 is
Opo. Equal po siya sa 1.
equal siya sa 1. Okay. However, meron tayong negative value. So, it is not. Sorry. The sum is not equal to, actually, it's equal to 1, no? Ayan. So, etong sa second table natin, so obviously, it is a discrete probability distribution because the sum of P of X is equal to 1. So dito, equal din siya sa 1. Tanggalin natin yan. However, meron tayong negative value for the probability. So automatically, hindi na siya discrete probability distribution. Okay? Nakuha po ba?
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes po.
Okay, example number 3. So the following data show the probabilities for the number of cars sold in a given day at a car dealer store. Ayan, so ito yung kanina, no? Binanggit ko, pwede natin siyang i-represent as decimal form, yung probability. So number of cars, yung first column natin, then yung second column natin is yung probability na I think mabebenta yung sasakyan. So, pag may bumili, walang bumili, merong 0.1 or meron, 0.1 na chance. Pag yung isang kotse lang bibilhin, that's 15%, and so on and so forth. Okay, so example number 3, possible then na in this lesson, we are going to compute or to solve for the probability. So, pag may ganito, solve P of X is less than or equal to 2, we need to interpret first this. So, paano natin siya i-interpret? Sabi, variable X or the number of cars is less than or equal to 2. So, pag in-interpret natin yan, mag-start tayo sa 2, and then less than 2, what are the number of cars less than 2? That's 1 and 0. So, i-take natin yung probability ng 0, 1, and 2. Mapapansin natin, we have 0, P of 0, P of 1, and P of 2. Kuhanin lang yung possible probability, hindi pala possible. Kuhanin lang natin yung equivalent probability, that is, for P of 0, that's 0.100. For P of 1, that's 0.150. P of 2, that's 0.250. Then get the sum, that will give you 0.5 or 0.500. Okay, for letter B, solve for P of X is greater than or equal to 7. So, sabi daw, interpret natin, our variable X is greater than or equal to 7. So, equal to 7 and greater than 7. So, meaning to say 7 and above, so that is 8, 9, and 10. So, kuhanin lang natin yung probability 7, 8, 9, and 10. Equivalent probability 0.50, 0.050, 0.040, 0.025, 0.015. Then get the sum, that is equivalent to 0.130. And then for the last given, solve P of X is less than or equal to 1. X greater than or equal to 1 but less than or equal to 5. Okay, so paano natin ito interpret? Mag-start tayo sa middle, no, class? Middle. And then, i-compare natin siya sa 1. And then, i-compare natin siya sa 5. So, X should be greater than or equal to 1, but less than or equal to 5. Okay? So, meaning to say, mag-start tayo sa 5. Less, di ba? Kasi kailangan less than or equal to 5, but greater than or equal to 1. So, 5 tayo. So, ano ba to? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0?
Five, four, three, two, one.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 tayo. Ayan. So, kuhanin lang natin lahat. P of 1, P of 2, probability of 3, 4, and 5. Get the equivalent probability, and then get the sum. That will give you the answer. 0.710. Okay? Nakuha po ba?
Opo, sir.
Opo, sir.
Okay. So this will be our last
Yes po.
example. Okay, thank you. This will be our last example, number 4. So dito, practical application to, no? So nga pala, lahat ng example na binigay ko sa inyo ay yung all possible problems na may encounter niya. So example number 4, Mary sells homemade hot dogs. Because of the growing sales of her business, She wishes to analyze her sales to decide if she needs to expand. The following table shows the collected data from last month. So the first column will give us the number of hot dogs sold per transaction, and then the number of customer for the second column. Okay, so I think the total number of customers are ay 500, equivalent siya sa 500. So Mary wants to know how likely is it that the next customer will buy just one hot dog. So ilang percent kaya yung chance na merong customer or yung next customer ang bibili niya na number of hot dogs ay isa lang. And then out of 350 customers, how many are expected to buy more than 3 hot dogs? So out of 350 customers, how many kaya, ilan kaya yung bibili na more than 3 hot dogs? So later on, we will answer these questions using this topic or using this lesson. Okay? Ayan. So let X represent the number of hot dogs sold per customer. Ayan. So we have the total of the number of hot dogs sold per transaction, the number of customers. There are a total of 500 customers. So we are going to identify the probability kung ilan yung, the probability of, or the chance na ilan percentage kaya, or gaano kaya kataas yung chance na merong customer na bibili ng isang hotdog, dalawa, tatlo, apat, lima, hanggang anim na hotdog. So dito, since merong based on Mary's records, no, 235 customers yung bumili over 500. So 235 over 500, so that is 47 over 100, lowest term, convert into decimal, 0.47, convert to the percentage, that is equivalent to 47%. We need to say 47% yung chance na merong yung next or yung customer ay bibili lang ng isang hotdog. And then so on for the rest of the rows. So dito, 0.32, so that is 32%, that's 11, 7%, 2, and 1%. So on and so on. Now, since we already identified the probabilities na isang event, we can use graph to represent that. So, ating sa ating x-axis, itong sa baba, the number of hot dogs, and then on our y-axis is yung chance or yung probability ng pagbili ng customer na number of hot dogs. So, okay. Ayan. So, the distribution can be used to answer the questions of Mary. So, ito yung distribution table na ginawa natin kanina. And then, ito yung question ni Mary. So, how likely is that the next customer will buy just one hot dog? So, based on the table computed, we have 0.47 or 47%. Okay, so 47% of the chance or 47% of the time, bibili lang ng customer ay isang hotdog. Okay? Then, question number 2, out of 350 customers, how many are expected to buy more than 3 hot dogs? Okay? So, dito, x is greater than 3 kasi we are looking for the total number of probability for 3 greater than 3 hot dogs yung bibili ng customer. So, we need to say, hindi included yung 3, no? Kasi it should be greater than 3. So, 4, 5, and 6. Get the equivalent probability for 4, 5, and 6. That is 0.07, 0.02, 0.01. That will give you 0.10 or 10%. Now, since Mary wants to know out of 350 customers, ilan yung bibili ng more than 3 hot dogs, so we need to get the 10% of 350. So, expected ni Mary na sa 350 customers, merong 35 customers na bibili ng more than 3 hot dogs. So, for my references, you can visit this channel, you can visit these sites, and there's the book that I use as my reference.